there has been some of the craziest ways to die. For example, Mussolini. That man went out on some crazy shit, bro. If y'all remember, I'm pretty sure they hung this dude upside down and chopped off his meat. Hey, that's gotta be one of the craziest ways to go out. But without further ado, we are gonna be reacting to the most ridiculous ways to die in history. So let's get straight into it.
The silliest deaths in history, part 2. In a world of constant scientific revolution and innovation, it's required that any new theories be put to the test with reliable and repeatable proofs. Otherwise, you're about as useful as a flat earther. But sometimes that proof puts people in harm's way. Take, for instance, one Jesse William Lazier. This handsome block of cheddar was an American physician in the late 1800s, though he did live to see the new century, just not for very long. But we'll get to that in a bit. Growing from a well-to-do boy into a well-to-do man, Lazier had a passion for helping the ill and minimizing all of the icky sickies that had plagued humanity throughout history. So he took that passion and put it to good use, receiving his doctorate in medicine from Columbia University in 1892. Upgrading himself from graduate to practicing physician in 1895, Lazier focused his studies on two major diseases, the infectious malaria and the deadly yellow fever, both of which were stirring up all kinds of problems in the late 1800s, the worst of which being that people were dying. But exactly how these diseases were being spread so easily, particularly in the southern United States and in the Caribbean, remained a mystery. For a few more years at least. Well, that's not exactly true. You see, about 14 years earlier, Cuban public health professional disease researcher guy Carlos Finlay came up with a theory. He proposed that some diseases, particularly yellow fever, could be transmitted through the bite of a single infected mosquito. It's a rather simple theory. An itty-bitty mosquito bites an infected monkey, acquires the yellow fever, flies away, finds a healthy human, gives the suck and leaves behind yellow fever, and the cycle continues. Now, if you've ever spent more than 2 seconds in the American South, you know just how bad them little shits can get. So if there's a few infected people and a lot of mosquitoes...
Bro, there's nothing worse than mosquito bites, bro. Honestly, like, what do mosquitoes even do for the environment? Like, bro, this might sound bad, but every time I see a mosquito, I try to I be trying to smack them out the air, bro, because don't bite me, bro. Them shits be itching, bro. And some mosquitoes got the crazy diseases, like they said, bro. But yeah, that might be bad, but every time I see a mosquito, it's
things are gonna spread faster than a bad joke at a dad convention. Oh, come on, I'm hungry. He said it. Finlay laid out his research and presented his nido-mosquito theory to the scientific community, opting for control over the mosquito population to minimize the spread. And they all laughed at him. All them stupid science bitches ridiculed and mocked Finlay's theory, brushing it off as complete nonsense. But now we fast forward more than a decade, and a very confident Lazier was willing to put that theory to the test. On himself.
Okay,
right here's an infected skater, and here's an uninfected me. So, if it bites...
Alright, he's dangerous. He put his life on the line for science. Wait, actually, I don't know. Would you die from yellow fever? From yellow fever... in, I think he said 15 years later from, let's see. You could die from yellow fever in 19, yes. So, dang! So this dude's putting his life on the line for research? Okay, brother. Okay, brother. Hey, props to you, brother. Props to you, brother. But I ain't gonna lie, use an idiot. I don't know why. Test it on a mouse or something. I don't know why you gotta use yourself. Or that snail right there. Test it on that snail first.
That's me and I get infected? Well, there you go. And so, in September of 1900, Lazier was deliberately bitten by an infected mosquito. He contracted yellow fever and died several days later.
See, that's what bro, that's what your ass get, bro. Why are you doing it? Why are you giving yourself a deadly disease if you're not even 100% sure that your cure works? You know what I'm saying? But at least he died for science, man. He died doing what he loves, bro.
Sacrifice would not be in vain, as it confirmed Finlay's theory, subsequently revolutionizing the control of yellow fever, including controlling the mosquito population. The age of exploit.
Alright, here, we're gonna rank these. That number one, that is a pretty stupid way to die, because you're giving yourself, you knew, like, people were dying back then from that disease, so you knew you could have died, you know what I'm saying? So that's a pretty avoidable death, but we gonna see which one's gonna be the dumbest. So that's number one.
Generation saw a lot of exploring from many a capable sea captain. But amongst the Columbuses and Marco Polos of history, some have fallen through the cracks, their deeds and accomplishments forgotten to time, or just not important enough for people to care. Johnny Kendrick was one such captain. Ever since growing up aboard Papa Kendrick's whaling vessel in his teenage years, John had a love of the sea, which explains the vast success he found in his later years. This guy was more American than he strapped apple pie asking for a tip. A member of the American Sons of Liberty, Kendrick personally took part in the famous Boston Tea Party, hucking countless crates of precious British life fuel into the harbor. He also commanded a privateer ship during the American Revolution, attacking and capturing British warships with his crew of 104 men, even going as far as helping convince the French to join the fight. After helping America get its independence, Kendrick took to the seas once more, this time on a more exploratory venture. Teaming up with famous explorer ship-sailing captain fellow Robert Gray, whom you've probably never heard of, the two bros made history, leading the first US expedition to the Pacific Northwest, where they established a strong fur trade route. This was mainly trading goods like mirrors and knives to purchase sea otter pellets from local natives. Hey, gotta do what you gotta do, you know? Kendrick also made himself at home in Hawaii in the late 1700s. There, he built up a pretty lucrative sandalwood trade hub, harvesting the wood in Hawaii and shipping it off to China, who treasured the luscious lumber for its durability, medicinal and therapeutic properties, and of course, its smell. Oh, that's good wood.
But what the
So
fuck?
Kendrick spent many a year
What the hell,
just
man?
jamming as much of his wood as he could into China's supple trading ports, skipping back and forth across the Pacific
Hey, yo!
between mainland China and the Hawaiian Islands. But Hawaii, historically speaking, often had a bunch of fighting between chiefs of the different islands. Each chief, understandably enough, wanted to expand their respective territories and influence. Well, when return...
Hold on, let me go back. Is this tat hard, y'all? If y'all saw a man like 100 years ago, was this tat hard, bro? Like, if you saw some shit, like if you saw somebody today with this face tat, would that shit be hard? Would that strike fear into y'all? Cause I'm not gonna lie, bro. I would just think you're an idiot if you get your face tatted like this. But maybe that shit was hard back in the day. I don't know.
and influence. Well, when returning to the islands in 1794, Kendrick found Hawaii to be in complete turmoil, with two chiefs duking it out to be the big chief in charge. One of the tribes was being supplied by Captain William Brown, a proper Brit who was willing to get some land for the British crown. Kendrick replied he too supplied a chief of great renown, and put to the test Kendrick did his best to smack the captain down. So in December of 1794, a battle commenced with Captain Brown supporting the chief of Oahu and Kendrick supporting the chief of Kauai. How cute. The tropical tussle ended with Kendrick's side being victorious, inspiring him to celebrate the only way a true American knows how, by firing off loud guns.
Damn.
As planned, Kendrick's
I'm guessing, bro. This is what I'm guessing, bro. He dies to his own gunshots. Just gonna guess after celebrating.
ship had ignited a volley of cannon fire. Although his side had lost, Captain Brown, determined to uphold proper British etiquette, agreed to discharge a volley of his own cannons in Kendrick's honor. Oh, this turtle soup is to die for. Well, that's what you get for slurping your soup. Ugh, turns out in a complete honest mistake, Captain Brown forgot to unload shot from one of his cannons before firing it off. Some historical accounts claim that grape shot tore through Kendrick's cabin, creating complete chaos and quickly killing the
Alright, that's not one of the most stupidest deaths because someone killed him. I was not expecting that, bro. How was that put under the stupidest deaths? I'm not gonna lie, because it was the other dude's fault. He lost the war and he was trying to celebrate his loss. I don't know. That makes no fucking sense. And ended up nah, that had to have been on purpose. He had to do that on purpose, bro. He had secret animosity, bro. He had to done that shit on purpose, bro. But yeah, no, the first one's way dumber. Giving yourself a yellow fever and dying, that's way stupider than whatever just happened now.
competent captain as he crunched on a collation of consumables. Oh, sorry about that. It's completely my fault. Yep, that Jack Daniel, the two first-name having freak who founded the famous Jack Daniel's Tennessee Whiskey Company. You know, that succulent spirit that did, will, or is getting you through those tough college days or life in general. That's the one. Well, little Jackie Boy was born in Tennessee in the mid-1800s as the youngest of 10, mainly because his birth was the one that sent his beloved mother skyward. Very sad. Now, unfortunately, not much is known about Jack's early life because them town records don't went caught fire. Most of the insight that we do have into Jack's life actually comes from the Jack Daniels Company historical records. Teeny Tiny Jack, the youthful entrepreneur that he was, yearned for work at the ripe old age of 8. The man to answer Jack's call was this guy, Dan Call, a preacher, a screecher, and one distilling creature. And of course, it would be here that Jack would find his calling. Something about Jack caught Dan's eye, and he saw real potential in the little tyke. "This boy's gonna make a fine whiskey one day, I tell you what." And so, according to company history, an 8-year-old Jack began learning the art and science of distillation from one Nathan Green, a master distiller and slave under Dan Call. Fast forward several years, and Dan hit a crossroad. Given an ultimatum by his wife, Dan had to choose between his relationship with his tasty spirits or the Holy Spirit. The Reverend chose his Lord and Savior, saving his soul and his liver in the process. In that choice, Dan had sold his prized distillery to none other than his favorite pupil, Jack Daniel, whose first act as new owner was to hire on his friend and mentor Nathan Green as the company's master distiller. He also employed Nathan's 2 adult sons and, later down the line, his grandsons. Now, the Jack Daniels website really emphasizes that Jack never owned slaves. So if you disagree, don't look at me. I'm just a guy on the internet. A man of all business and no pleasure, Jack never married nor had any children of his own. He did, however, take his nephews under his wing to learn the business, eventually handing the distillery down to them in 1907 once his health bar had reached a solid yellow. But it would be a few years later in 1911 before Jack would kick the bucket, or in this case, something much heavier. According to legend, Jack Daniel, now in his 60s or so, had forgotten the combination to a personal safe housing a bunch of valuables like safes are typically designed to do. In his frustration, Jack tried to solve the problem in true US Southerner fashion, by putting a boot up its ass. But since a safe has buns of literal steel, Jack instead broke his toe, causing a severe blood infection. Jack Daniel reportedly died of blood poisoning on October 9th, 1911. But
that is a stupid ass death, but like, that's just like terrible luck. Alright, but what the fuck are you doing? Is this the safe? You're trying to kick this open? Yeah, he was an idiot. I don't know why he thought kicking the safe would have opened it up, but that's gotta just be the most unluckiest shit in the world. But like blood poison, like you talking about like the rust, like he kicked it, the rust like opened his toe somehow, and he got, I guess, poison from that. I don't know how that works, but that's just super unlucky. I still think the mosquito one is worse because he didn't know that was gonna kill him. Like he knew he was gonna get the yellow fever from that, so first one's still the dumbest. I think this is the second dumbest so far, though.
is this story true? I don't know. Here's a rather recent one for you. Back in 1993, when the world was witnessing the birth of the internet, Czechoslovakia was checking out, and President Clinton was gearing up to suck or be sucked at his job, Gary Hoy was about to meet his untimely death. An extremely successful business partner and corporate and securities law specialist for the Holden Day Wilson law firm in Toronto, Canada, Gary was living it up. But he would quickly learn that it's a long fall from the top. Gary had a reputation as a very personable guy, always loving to talk to people, share wisdom, and loved cracking a few jokes here and there. But on July 9th, 1993, one of Gary's jokes would fall flat. While attending a reception in the office on a Friday, Gary decided to give a tour of the office to a group of accounting and law students, which of course was a typical routine for Gary's charismatic character. But what happens next would be cemented in the minds of everyone around him. While on the tour of the 24th floor office, Gary decided to whip out his signature move. Boasting about the structural integrity of Canadian architecture and the seemingly unbreakable glass office windows, Gary charged full speed towards one of said windows, a party trick he apparently had performed successfully many times in the past. Typical Gary. But this time, he was also successful. Gary bounced right off of the glass without a hitch, to the applause and laughter of the students. You wanna see me do it again?
Yeah.
Not really. Gary was about to push his luck, and a little too hard on the window. Gary charged once more, hitting the glass at a sprint. Now, to his credit, the glass didn't break, but the entire window frame dislodged from its setting, causing Gary to plunge the full 24 stories to his death. The students and various colleagues stood paralyzed and horror-struck after witnessing Gary's fall, not to mention the witnesses on the ground where Hoy's body had landed. Following the incident, many of the firm's lawyers received professional counseling, but some chose to part ways with the company.
Alright, that is stupid as fuck. That's stupid as fuck. I ain't gonna lie. But still, giving yourself a virus back in the 90s where you knew it was killing everybody, like you knew that's still the dumbest. I'm not gonna lie. At least in this one, he's done it multiple times and he knew in his mind he just did it once and he thought it wasn't gonna happen again. I put this number 2. I think this is dumber than kick. Nah. Yeah, no, this is definitely dumber than just kicking that, because I feel like if I was like overly mad trying to pick a lock, I would kick it too, but out of frustration and then toe break. That's just super unfortunate though. This, what compels you to want to do that? Like that's just stupid. All right, look, this is number 1. This is the stupidest, the first one. This is the second stupidest so far. And then what's this? Jack Daniels the third, and then the other person getting killed by someone. That's just unlucky. I don't think that has anything to do with him.
Eventually leading to its full closure in 1996. Talk about having a falling out. Each of us wants to accomplish our own big motivational concrete goals before crossing the eternal finish line. A loving family, traveling the world, subscribing to this channel, which you can do right now. But as the Rolling Stones once said, you can't always get what you want. But if you try sometimes, I forget the rest. Anyway, this is Frank Hayes, and he has his own goal: to win a race. A horse race. Problem is, though, he is no professional jockey. A young Irish fella born in Ireland in 1901, Frank grew up as a stable boy and eventually an apprentice horse trainer under James Frayling, a wealthy gent who owned and bred professional racing horses. Paying close attention to Frank's rather small stature, Frayling gave Frank an opportunity to race as a jockey. And he lost. But apparently not too bad, because he was given a second chance in 1923. One small snag in this plan, however, was that Frank was a tad too heavy. Jockeys were required to weigh less than 130 pounds in order to qualify for racing.
What? 130 pounds? Hey, any grown man, what did it say? Cool hat. Alright, no, under 130 pounds, that's like anorexic for any grown man that's above the height of 5'3". That's like, bro, I think a grown man should weigh 180 pounds at least.
Ideally, the slimmer and
depending on your height, obviously.
Sleeker your jockey is, the less of a burden.
Like if you're 6'2", you gotta be like 200 at least.
He is for the horse, allowing for a higher potential speed. Less mass, go fast. And so Frank was given a doozy of a task: lose 12 pounds in a few days. And that's a big ask for someone already in a healthy weight range, but Frank was determined to strap in the saddle once more. Through what I can only
he's gonna starve himself for a few days and die, or like not drink any water, and that's how he dies.
Imagine were extremely unhealthy choices, the frail Frank ended up making the cut and was given the thumbs up to participate in the race, though he was nowhere near expected to win, with him and his horse only given 20-1 odds.
Bro.
On June 4th, 1923, Frank mounted his horse named Sweet Kiss and prepared to travel around the track. The racers were off, and Sweet Kiss quickly trailed behind the group. However, in the final stretch, Sweet Kiss apparently kicked in maximum overdrive and managed to close the gap, with Frank appearing locked in, closely hugging the horse's neck. In an extreme upset, Sweet Kiss actually won the race by a pretty respectable lead. But after dropping from a gallop to a canter to a walk, Frank was still closely gripping the steed. Frank Hayes was dead. During the race, Frank's heart gave out, presumably from the extreme and unhealthily fast weight drop sustained to get into the race in the first place. So yeah, Sweet Kiss carried a corpse across the finish line. Frank Hayes photo finished into the great beyond at the age of 22. Or 35, depending on whatever source you read. I know that's a big discrepancy, but welcome to history. Unfortunately, Sweet Kiss, now superstitiously dubbed Sweet Kiss of Death, never ran another race as jockeys refused to mount the mare, fearing a similar fate. So of course, it was the end of her show, and she got her final curtain call.
Damn, bro.
Speaking of which...
Alright, again, the ranking list, I think this is... He died doing what he wanted to do, though. You know, like, he really wanted to do this race. I think cutting 12 pounds in 2 days or whatever it was is kind of stupid, but I don't think that would kill you, you know what I'm saying? He probably, his heart gave out from what? It didn't even say what it gave out from, but, alright. I would say the first one, letting an infected mosquito bite you willingly, that's the dumbest shit. That's number 1. The second dumbest one is the one dude that jumped out the window saying it wasn't going, you feel me? And then I would say this is probably the... Nah, that, again, he didn't know he was going to die. So these two kind of on the same level. I would still put kicking the safe as number 3. This one the fourth dumbest, and then the other dude getting shot. That had nothing to do with him, bro. That was someone else doing it to him. So that's what I think under this. Let's see what the comments say. Any of the comments. I wouldn't call the first guy a silly death. He spent his last days writing about symptoms and what was going on in his body. He sacrificed help save millions of people. Yeah, you're right. It did. It very well did. But again, we're talking about just dying. You gave yourself a sickness. You knew it could have killed you, and then he died. It's one of the dumbest deaths, bro, honestly. But yeah, man, that's going to be the video. If y'all watched, man, thank you for watching. You know, I'm going to keep dropping every day, but I'm going to see y'all, boys. Peace.
Little nigga better back up. 40s from 2-3, smack you harder than a Mack truck. Send the link and die, but y'all ain't really with the cap stuff. I know these niggas really bitch, they just act rough.